Why do bad things happen to good people? This is such a hard question, and I would be lying to you if I told you that I had an answer that made everything just feel 100% okay about this question. But there are a few things we can look at that I think help us understand it a little bit. First of all, we need to answer a different question. We need to answer, why do bad things happen, period? It wasn't always this way. You know, God created heaven and earth, and he created it good. But what happened? Adam and Eve, mankind fell. We walked away from the plan of God. And everyone since Adam and Eve has sinned and has fallen short of God's glory. And that means we've done things in a way that was not pleasing to God and was not the way that God set up for human flourishing in this world. So ultimately, a lot of the time, bad things happen to good people and we turn it towards God and we start doubting God because of it. When in reality, it's because of human beings that evil is in this world. It's because of human beings that our world is broken and that bad things happen in the first place. So we need to be careful not to blame God for the problems that humanity has brought on themselves. But a second thing, that being said, sometimes it seems like good people have harder lives than bad people. It seems like sometimes the people who live life right have more terrible things that happen to them than the people who everyone would agree, well, that person's just a terrible person. Sometimes the wicked thrive. And you need to know the Bible is not unaware of that. The Bible addresses that. It's very clear that that's something that happens in this life. So Ecclesiastes chapter 9 verse 2 talks about how the same things happen for both the good and the evil. Even though you would think, based on kind of the wisdom that you see in a lot of the Bible, that if you're good, you're going to have a better life. If you're evil, you're going to have a worse life. The Bible is realistic, and it says sometimes it looks on the surface like the evil are having a better life than the good. And it doesn't really make sense. It's not how God made it to be. And we believe that God is powerful enough to keep these things from happening. So why doesn't he? Well, why doesn't he stop bad things from happening to good people? Well, there could be a lot of reasons, but I want to point you to Romans chapter 8. In Romans chapter 8, God says that he is working all things together for good for those who love him and who are called according to his purpose. He's working all things together for good. So what is that good? When bad things happen to good people, what is the good that God is working out of it? It could be a lot of things. I mean, God uses struggles sometimes to grow our faith, to draw us closer to him. A lot of the time when people are in their deepest, darkest struggles of their lives, God uses it to draw them closer and to strengthen their faith. Think about what Paul says whenever he says that God's strength is perfected in his weakness. It's the idea that the weaker Paul is, the more it shows God's strength in sustaining him and in saving him from that weakness. So maybe it's to draw someone closer to him, to increase their faith. Maybe it's to see someone saved. Think about Jesus. Jesus was the best person. He was truly the only totally good person. And yet he suffered. Bad things happened to Jesus. Why? Well, it was in order to save someone. It was in order to save us. Jesus suffered and died on the cross so that he could save us. And a lot of the time, in a lesser way, sure, but Christians can actually experience a similar thing where we experience suffering, but the way that we suffer and the way that we trust in God through it can actually point people to Jesus. So I knew a guy who he found out that he had cancer, and he went and he was in the hospital for a long time, and he was a believer, a strong believer, and the entire time he was in the hospital with cancer, suffering, in this situation that most people in the world would just be hopeless and frustrated and angry about. The entire time he's in the hospital room, he's sharing the gospel with the nurses around them. He's exuding just joy and hope and trust in the Lord. He's talking to the doctors about Jesus, and people were able to see his faith and were actually pointed towards God because of his suffering. Maybe it's so that God can show his love to the world through the church. A lot of the times when really bad things happen to people who are in the church, the church rallies around them and supports them in a really amazing way, whether it's giving financially or giving emotional support or just taking care of the things that need to be done to help this person. And that shows off God's love to the world because it shows how we as a church can love one another. Now, there could be so many other reasons, but in all of this, we have to remember our perspective is limited. And in the moment, a lot of the time, we will have no idea why God is doing this. A lot of the time in the moment, it just feels hopeless and it's like, God, why? Why are you putting me through this? Why would you let this happen to me? Sometimes we'll live to the end of our life and we won't know the reason. But we can hold to this hope that God's perspective is not limited, that God's perspective is eternal, and that he sees all things past, all things future, and all things present. And in all of that, he is working everything out for the good of those who love him. He is working all of history towards this time when there will be no more suffering, when there will be no more bad things happening to good people, whenever we will live with him in eternity with joy and knowing him fully. He's working all things towards that. So even in the times of deep, deep suffering and sorrow, we can actually put our hope in God, knowing that he has something better for us, and he's somehow using what is happening to us to point us towards that day.